All praises to the Most High. Welcome to the channel. This is the Pharaohtist, and welcome to Kush Culture. Today we're going to do a video of Moses and Akhenaten. So stay tuned. Okay, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the channel. I really appreciate you stopping by this live. I wanted to do this is pretty much going to do some research about Moses and Akhenaten. I always felt like they were one and the same. I always felt like people were imitating Akhenaten with Moses. I always felt that in my spirit for quite some time. So when I came across this book, I wanted to go ahead and do a live on it, today is my first live, so on this channel. So I wanted to go ahead and do a live on this channel on this subject right here, Moses and Akhenaten. And as we continue going through, I might make this a 3-part series because there's a lot of information that when you start reading the book, you start having questions. It wakens you into other thoughts, you know. So as we continue on into this book, you'll see what I'm talking about, especially if you always have reservations or doubts or want to know if you had the same sentiments that I'm sharing right now about these two individuals. I love Akhenaten, so he's one of my people I admire. So for different reasons, some people call him a heretic, but they also call Martin Luther King a heretic. So it depends on who's saying it and what they mean by when they say it. But anyway, I want to appreciate you. I want to tell you I appreciate you coming by, stopping by the live, and hopefully we can both learn something out of this subject. So if you're interested, leave a comment below, like and share, and let's get, let's get into the video. Okay, Moses and Akhenaten, and it says the secret history of Egypt at the time of the Exodus. And we already know about the Exodus and the 12 tribes and all that kind of stuff. But when I came across this book, I just started reading it, and I made a couple of outlines, and then I just kind of say, you know what, let me go ahead and do a live on this because I started raising questions to myself. You know, it's worth discussing. So thank you. So let's go ahead into it. And I wanted to I have let me see here. I got the Bible here, and I got my dictionary for words that I might need have questions about, and there's abbreviations and definitions, and I also have the King's List here. So I might make this a three-part um, video because it's going to be very detailed, and hopefully I can deliver it in a manner that people can understand. So let's just see what I can do. So let's go back now. I'm into my PDF. Let me make this easier to scroll down. And you can see a map of Egypt during the time of the empire of the 16th and the 12th centuries BC. And if you know anything about maps or interested in anything going on with Egypt, and as like the community is also, into the mythologies and chronologies of our history and our ancestors. So it's good to see the maps, the older maps, and go through them and see how they apply, and see the differences between generations and how they changed the names, locations, and had rivers and flooded places. And I have a lot of books from the 14th, 15th, all the way to the 19th century. I have older, newer books too, but most of the books I have, you can pretty much build the foundation, and you can see why, where things started from, and what the thought process was, you know, back then and compared to now. So anyway, that's the reason why I have so many books with those dates on it. So anyway, you're gonna come down here. You're gonna see Cush and Nubia. And you're gonna see Edom up here, Moab, Gaza, the Dead Sea, Alexandria, Abydos, and Thebes, Aswan. You see the first cataract, the third cataract, and here's the fourth down here. Here's the second, the third, and the fourth. This is up where Sudan and Egypt is. Well, this is Sudan here. So let me keep going. The Ways of Horus, the ancient road mentioned in the Bible between Egypt and Palestine in northern Sinai. Okay, map indicating artificial borders of the location here accepted by Ramses. It can be seen there are no archaeological connections between the different ancient sites. And these are where the remains of some of the pharaohs are. The chronology of the 18th and 19th dynasties, bricks without straws. You remember the stories about how they had the Israelites build the bricks without straws, especially when Moses was about to deliver them, and well, not deliver them, but to take them out of Egypt. And the Pharaoh had them do different things to, for who God knows why, this make things difficult for the people trying to get out of there. But I don't want to jump ahead because as we read through the book, you're gonna understand why. And let me just say this: so the author is trying to draw a parallel between Moses and Akhenaten. So this is the purpose of this book. And as I read, you're gonna see where it's going to duplicate some of the things in the Bible, but it's also going to cause for reservations, and you're going to start asking questions, and that's where my thought process comes in, where I wanted to do a video on it, because I started having questions. You can read the Bible 1,000 times, and then sometimes the light will come on, and you have more questions than you have answers. So let's see what we can get out of this. I'm going to jump right down to the first chapter, and the first chapter is going to be bricks without straw, I believe. I already did some highlighting. I'm going to leave a link to the book also. Now let me read this real quick. Yeah, see here, this is where they talk about Akhenaten as being a heretic queen. Well, that's what people call them, but I hate that. I hate that people do that. Let me just read this real quick. The historical Akhenaten is remarkably different from the figure popularists have created for us humanists. He was not, and certainly no, humanitarian romantic. To make of him a tragic Christian-like figure is a sheer falsehood, nor is he a mention of Moses. A vast gulf is fixed between the rigid, coercive, ratified monotheism of the Pharaoh and Hebrew, of the Pharaoh and Hebrew henotheism, belief in one God without asserting that he is the only God, which is, in any case, we see throughout the distorted prisms of texts written 700 years after Akhenaten's death. Now, they always said that Akhenaten was a heretic, but they always say that about people. I noticed that they only say that about black people. I have never known anyone who didn't look like me called a heretic. Now, a heretic is a person that believes in only one God. And the sad part about that is, I don't know anyone who doesn't believe in more than one God. Even Christianity only believes in one God. So, what makes Akhenaten a heretic? He said there's only one God. So why are we going to serve all these other gods when there's only one? There's only one creator. Everyone in Hebrews, Christianity, even the Muslims, they believe in only one God. So, if Akhenaten's a heretic, then everyone else is too. But they always called him a heretic. Even today, when you listen to some of the history lessons that are given by other people, they always call him a heretic. And the sad part about that is, whenever our brothers are no longer here, they always find a way to discredit them on their way out or while they're dead. But to me, Akhenaten is probably the most popular, well-known pharaoh out of them all. To me, because everyone always refers to him, and some people refer to him as Moses, and like I'm one of them who believes that. So here's a chronology of the 18th dynasty, and this is the list of pharaohs and their tenure, and the years of their tenure. And you can see down here Tutankhamun, he was 9. He ruled for 9 years. That's Akhenaten's son. And here is Amenhotep IV, which is Akhenaten. He ruled for 17 years. Again, I'm going to leave the link down below, so if you want to get a copy of this or something, just let me know. Well, I'll just say this. If anyone wants a copy or the link to the book, let me know, then I'll drop it. But I'm not going to drop it before that, because I just don't want to leave that out there, because it takes time to get these books. So, I'm just saying. Then into the chronology of the 19th dynasty. Chronology of the 19th dynasty. The Ramses the First, 2 years. Let me see, he's 2 years. And the source of this information comes from Alan H. Garner, Egypt of the Pharaohs. These dates are given here to be helpful to the reader. The accuracy of some of them and the questions of whether these are currencies between any of the kings mentioned will be argued later. Well, I think it all can be argued later, because no one living today was there to even know, so you can only conjure up what you might think to be true. So this is the first chapter, Bricks Without Straw. And I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can drop this down and read some of it. I had some of it highlighted before. I don't know if it's still highlighted or not. Let me see. Because I had some. Oh, okay, it's still highlighted. So let me go ahead and read. Okay, bricks without straw. If Moses and the king Akhenaten were the same person, certain other things must follow. It is necessary to demonstrate that they were born of the same parents in the same place at the same time. That the monotheistic religion of Moses and the monotheistic religion of Akhenaten, which he tried to impose upon Egypt, are similar. That on one falling from power in 17 years of his reign, Akhenaten did not meet the end but fled to Sinai, where subsequent traces of worship of this god, the Aten, are to be found. And a number of other biblical characters can be identified with characters in Egyptian history, and finally, with a chronology can be established for the sojourn of the Israelites in Egypt, which matches the chronology of the pharaohs who ruled at the end of the 18th dynasty and the beginning of the 19th. These all will be seen are complex matters. The evidence available is often contradictory and has been often misinterpreted in various ways. The length of the sojourn and the length of the reigns of the various kings, whether or not Akhenaten had a coordinacy with his father, Amenhotep III, the precise location of the frontier fortified city of Zaro, where I believe Moses and Akhenaten was born, and various other matters have been the subject of protracted scholarly debate and disagreement. It would therefore be necessary to merely put forward the positive evidence and point to the truth, but to expose the flaws and variety of other theories that have been advanced. The most detailed, but not the only source we have for information about the life of Moses in the Old Testament, and in particular the book of Exodus. The book of Exodus begins with a brief repetition of the account of Genesis of the Israelites' descent from Egypt to join the patriarch Joseph, who, having initially been sold into slavery by his brothers, had risen to the role of the country's vizier after interpreting Pharaoh's dreams about the 7 good years that were followed by the 7 lean years. As a result of occupying the high position, Joseph was able to obtain permission from his father Jacob, which they call Israel, in the tribe of Israel, to come down from the Canaan and live in Egypt. In all, we are told that the number of Israelites, including Joseph and his family, was settled in Egypt. As a result of this arrangement, totaled 70, 69 of them were named. So 69 of whom are named. The Israelites, 69 of whom are named. These Israelites, who are shepherds, were not allowed to settle into Egypt proper. However, the shepherds have been looked upon as an abomination to Egypt since the century-long occupation of the rule of the Eastern Delta as the Eastern Delta by the pastoralist Hyksos that preceded the foundation of the 18th dynasty. Instead, they were given land in Goshen, in the same area to the east of the Nile Delta, which by biblical traditions was remote from the sea of Pharaoh's power. Okay, I'm getting to the point. Okay, then where am I at now? Did I go up too many? Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about almost lost. Okay, here we are right here. The rest of the opening chapter of the book of Exodus is taken up with the rather muddied summary of the story that is to follow. Almost at the very beginning of the tale, you notice how they call it a tale? almost at the very beginning of the tale, which is clearly set in the eastern delta, we are told that the Israelites have waxed exceedingly mightily, and the land was filled with them. As the tribe of Israel considered of only 70 men, women, and children at the time of their arrival in Egypt, this vast increase in number suggested that some years must have elapsed in intervals to view, which appears to be confirmed by the next verse with its reference to the king. I'm sorry, to the king which knew not Joseph until the time of Harem, who finally ended the Armada era. There is no king of whom it can strictly be said that he did not know Joseph, whom I have identified as Yuya. Now, I looked up Yuya, and Yuya was supposed to have been the wife, Amenhotep III, Akhenaten's father's wife, was the daughter of Yuya. So I don't know how he came. I don't know what's true. I just know what I read. And then let me just prove that. Hold on. You see, let me just read the sentence over again. Because you see, he says he has identified as Yuya, advisor to Thutmose IV and his successor, Amenhotep III, since all the Amna kings were descended from Joseph. Next comes an account of his oppression, whose motive, it is said, is that when they fallen out any war, they join also unto the enemies and fight against us. But I'm gonna go back to, now I'm kind of like debunking this guy. Not that, but he may know more than I know, I'm sure. But I wanna see how he came to the conclusion that Joseph, whom I had identified as Yuya. Now, if you look up Yuya, which I did, let me go here and go under here, and I looked up Yuya, and this is who Yuya is supposed to be. Yuya, let me see. This is supposed to be Yuya, king's lieutenant, master of the horse, father of the god. But this is a woman. Now you see, she was married to Amenhotep III, which is Akhenaten's father. So if you go over and you read this, it says Yuya sometimes, I can't pronounce these names, known as Ya or Ya, was a powerful ancient Egyptian courier during the 18th dynasty of Egypt, who was married to Thuya, an Egyptian noblewoman associated, that was married to Thuya, an Egyptian noblewoman associated with the royal family. Okay. Held high offices in the government and religious hierarchies. Their daughter Tai became the great royal wife of Amenhotep. See, that was a daughter, so she married Amenhotep III, which is Akhenaten's father. The Yuya and Thuya are known to have had a son named Anan, who carried the title as Chancellor of the Lower Egypt. I want to go back to this first sentence. It says Yuya, sometimes known as Yi, and these different names. And it says as powerful in the as a powerful ancient Egyptian courier during the 18th dynasty of Egypt. He was married to Thuya, so I guess it is a guy, but I don't understand. And this is supposed to be Yuya. Yuya, king, lieutenant, master of the horse. I don't know. Looks like it seems to be a woman to me. Well, it says it's a man. Yuya came from. Let me get my cursor over here. It says Yuya came from the upper Egyptian town of Akhman, it says he probably owned an estate and was wealthy and member of the town's local nobility. So I guess it is a guy. So let me go back. Okay, so he might have so now he thinks that Joseph and Julia are the same people. Just like he believes Moses and Akhenaten is the same people, but so I do too. So let me keep on going. Next comes an account of the oppressor whose motive, it is said, is that when they were fallen out any war, they join also unto the enemies. They fight against us. The Egyptians set the Israelites into the task of building the treasure city of Pithom and Ramesses. They made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick, and in the manner of service in the field. Then we encountered a contradiction. When the Israelites continued to multiply, the ruling Pharaoh ordered that all the male children be born. All the male children born to had them. All the male children born to them were to be killed. Okay, this is where we have the Passover. Okay, here we are. Yet we learned that at that time, just when Moses is about to take their parents to the story, the Israelites had only two midwives, of which the name of one was Shipra and the name of the other was Puah. This urges that the incident must have been taking place early in sojourn, where two midwives were sufficient for the needs of the Israelite women, and that as Pharaoh was able to speak to the midwives in person, we must have been resident at the time in the vicinity of Goshen where the Israelites had settled. The midwives failed to carry the Pharaoh's orders, whereupon he issued a further order that all male children born to the Israelites in Egypt were to be cast into the river. Oh man, you know they had to be black. They don't do that to anybody else but black people. Sound like what they did when they fed the babies to the alligators, but you know, who's talking about that? With the second chapter, we come to the story of Moses, his birth, his slaying of the Egyptians, which caused him to flee from Egypt, his marriage, and his eventual return to lead the Exodus. Recounted with a more satisfactory chronology. He was born, we were told, to a man of the house of Levi, and a daughter of Levi, whose name was given later as Jochebed. In the face of the threat to all newly born male Israelite children, Jochebed kept her son in hiding for 3 months. Then, unable to conceal him herself any longer, she hid him among the reeds along the banks of the Nile in a papyrus blanket, coated with pitch and tar. Pharaoh's daughter saw the basket, then she went down to the river and bathed, and sent a slave girl to fetch it. When she opened the basket, the baby was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Israelite babies, she said. Okay, so this is where I wanted to highlight some things that I thought was kind of interesting. The implications up to this point is that Moses was the firstborn in his family. Here, however, we learn that he already had an older sister, Miriam, who had watched these events from a distance. She now approached and said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I fetch one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Then this suggested proved acceptable that sister summoned her mother, who agreed to nurse her own baby in return for payment. So this is what they're talking about in the story where Moses was sent down the Nile. The mother of Moses sent the baby down the Nile to prevent him from being killed. Because the baby was 3 months old, he was starting to require more, crying more, and more likely they was going to wind up hearing him, and they sent him down the Nile. Okay, and this is the great part of the story, is because when the Pharaoh's daughter found the baby, one of the Israelite daughters ran to Pharaoh's daughter and asked, "Should we find an Israelite mother to nurse the baby, and come to find out they wound up getting the actual mother. So the mother was able to nurse her own child and get paid for it. So that's a blessing. So all praises for that. So the Pharaoh's daughter who adopted him as her son and only. Oh, let me start over. Where was I? Okay, shall I fetch one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? When she suggested approved, when this suggestion proved acceptable, the sister summoned her mother, who agreed to nurse her own baby in return for payment. Later, when the child grew older, she took him back to the Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her son, and only now we learn adopted him as her son, and only now we learn gave him the name of Moses. Her choice, which will be the subject of analysis later, being explained by the laconic phrase, because I drew him out of the water. That's why they named him Moses, because the name Moses means to draw out. That's the definition of Moses, means to draw out. Okay, so this says when Moses grew older, she took him back to the Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her son, and only now we learn gave him the name of Moses. So we don't know how old Moses was. It didn't say when he grew older, but no one knows how old that was. I guess once she couldn't nurse anymore, I don't know, but it doesn't say how long. Okay, so this familiar account of the birth of Moses has some curious. I'm sorry, it's raining outside and it's lightning, so if the power goes out, I can't do anything about it. So I just want to let you know ahead of time. It's been raining. It's lightning right now, so you might hear it in the background. This familiar account of the birth of Moses has some curious aspects. It hardly seems logical that the mother, anxious to preserve the life of her 3-month-old son, will set him afloat on the Nile in such a frail craft. Then, after the intervention of the princess, we have no further indication that, having been returned to his mother, the child was still in danger of losing his life. Finally, the explanation of this later being reared in the palace because of the princess adopted him seems inherently improbable, as the customs of that time would not have allowed an unmarried princess to adopt a child. Oh, you get that? Let me highlight this. See, that makes sense. That makes sense. But this is the Bible narrative. So let me reread that again. Let me go back up here and read this again. I wanna start up here. It says, later when the child grew old, she took him back to the Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her son, and only we learned gave him the name of Moses. Her choice, which will be the subject of analysis later, being explained by the laconic phrase, because I drew him out of the water. This familiar account of the birth of Moses has some curious aspects. It hardly seems logical that the mother, anxious to preserve the life of her own 3-month-old son, would set him on the float on the Nile in such a frail craft. Then, after the intervention of the princess, we have no further indication that having been returned to his mother, the child was still in danger of losing his life. Finally, the explanation of his later being reared in the palace because the princess adopting him seems inherently improbable, as the customs at that time could not have allowed an unmarried woman princess to adopt a child. So you know what that means. What that's saying is that here you have a woman who had a child who wasn't supposed to keep him. She was supposed to. Well, I don't. You know what? Let me see. It doesn't say who was supposed to kill the kids. I mean, because say they're supposed to kill all the firstborn. Who was supposed to do it? They never said who was supposed to do it. Anyway, I can't imagine who would want to kill kids, but who was supposed to kill the children? But this is not about this live is not really about that. But it started raising questions of how did this supposed to all make sense? You have a woman who had a child, a boy child, the first male, and he's supposed to be the first child. That's what it said in the beginning. I need to find this in the birth, and he had a sister. When the Israelites continued to multiply, the ruling Pharaoh ordered that all male children born to them were to be killed. Yet we learned that at this time, just when Moses is about to make the appearance in the story, the Israelites had only two midwives, in which the name of one is Sephora and Shipra, and the name of the other was Pua. This argues that the incident must have been taking place early in sojourn, where two midwives were sufficient for the needs of the Israelite women, and that, as Pharaoh was able to speak to the midwives in person, he must have been a resident at the time in the vicinity of Goshen where the Israelites had settled. The midwives failed to carry out Pharaoh's orders. Whereupon he issued a further order that all male children born to the Israelites in Egypt were to be cast into the river. The second chapter of the story of Moses, his birth, his slaying of the Egyptians will cause him to flee from Egypt. His marriage and his eventual return to the land of Exodus. We counted that with. I wanted to get to where he was supposed to be the only one born. I wanted to get to that point because he had a sister, but they said he was the firstborn. Let me go back. I don't know. Okay, here it is. The implication up to this point is that Moses was the firstborn in his family. Here, however, we learn that he already had an elder sister, Miriam, who had watched these events from a distance. Now she approached and said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I fetch one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Okay, so that means that Miriam was a lot older. She had to be a lot older than Moses for her to sit back and watch the events from a distance and be able to understand what's going on. She now approached and said to the Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I fetch one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby?" So that means she had to be of an age where she's literate, she doesn't have any comprehension problems, she's aware of what's going on, she knows that that's her brother, she knows that she needs to go and get help or suggest some type of help, and she knows where to go to get help from to save her brother. So she had to be old enough to be able to understand that. So why do we think, or is it said that Moses was the firstborn in his family? Moving right along. So now, don't get me wrong, this live isn't about debunking some of the discrepancies. The reason why I highlighted it because there was a discrepancy as I was thinking about it, as I was reading, that question came to me, and I was wondering, how can that be? Maybe that's another error. I mean, sometimes that's where I guess the plagiarism, I don't know if you call it plagiarism, I guess when you copy someone else or you're trying to imitate someone else, they say when you lie, you got to remember what it was, because indications like this causes discrepancies, and then you have to go back and try to reiterate and try to remember what you said. So if Moses was the firstborn, how can he be the firstborn? Miriam's his sister. She's old enough to determine that he needs to get help, and she's smart enough to know that she needs to go to the Pharaoh's daughter to fetch her. So, and ask the question: do you think I should get one of the Israelites' daughters or sisters to nurse the baby? That's number one. Number two, this is another question that just came up just now. That was a giveaway. If the Pharaoh's daughter didn't know whose baby it was, Miriam gave the whole case away, because when she went to her to ask, if you want me to get one of the Israelite girls mother's daughters to nurse the baby. So the cover's blown from that. You know, if you didn't know, you know now. So the book of Exodus provides no details of the childhood of Moses. We hear next to him that he was grown up. He went out one day to watch his own people. I'm sorry, let me start over. The book of Exodus provides no details of the childhood of Moses. We next hear of him when he was growing up. We went out one day to watch his own people at the forced labor come across the Egyptians beating a Hebrew, slew him and hid his body in the sand. Now this is where I have a question, because if there's no account, I'm sorry, I'm getting sleepy now. It's 10:30. It's almost 11. If there's no account of Moses' childhood, and his mother had to give the child up when he was young, and he grew up with the Pharaoh's wife, or the Pharaoh, he grew up with the Pharaohs in the Pharaoh's home, then I find it would be hard for him to believe he was an Israelite or a Hebrew or whatever, because if you are taken away from your family, raised somewhere else, you're not really going to remember your family, especially if he's supposed to have been 40 years old when he went into the wilderness. So he's not even going to know he's a Israelite. He's not even going to know he's a Hebrew. I wouldn't think he would, because he's been raised as a Pharaoh's son, you know, and he's an Egyptian. But I don't understand that. I know it's not me to understand, but that's another question that you should have. The book of Exodus provides no details of the childhood of Moses. We next hear him when he grows up, when he's all grown up. He went out one day to watch his people at the forced labor, came across an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, slew him and hid his body in the sand. On learning the news of this episode, he reached Pharaoh's ears. On learning that the news of this episode had reached Pharaoh's ears, Moses fled to Midian and Sinai to avoid execution. There he was resting by a well. The 7 daughters of the priest of Midian arrived on the scene to water their father's flock of sheep. Some shepherds appeared shortly afterwards and tried to drive the daughters away, but Moses came to their rescue. On the girls' return home, Rael, their father, asked them, "Why are you back so early today?" They told him about their encounter with the shepherds, but an Egyptian. Now you see, now they're calling him an Egyptian, but the Egyptian rescued us, they explained, and drew water for us and watered the flock. And where is he? The father asked. Invite him to have something to eat. The invitation proved to be the start of a proactive stay. Moses became a guest in the house of the priest, who gave him one of his daughters, Zipporah, to marriage. And she bore Moses a son, who he named Gershon. Now you see here, she said, but an Egyptian rescued us. An Egyptian rescued. They didn't say a Hebrew. They said an Egyptian rescued us. Okay, so Moses, at that time, he didn't consider himself to be a Hebrew. He didn't consider himself to be an Israelite. He considered himself to be an Egyptian because he was raised, and he was old enough to be a man to have a wife and to support a wife. So he's grown. When he slew that person and hid his body in the sand, he fled, and he fled to a place and wound up. It doesn't say how long he's been on the run. It doesn't say where he went. They just say his direction. So there's a lot you don't know. You know, everything is left for interpretation. But now he has a wife and he has a son. So he has to be old enough to have a child, and who he named Gershon. Anyway, back to Egypt after the passage of many years. A new Pharaoh had come. Okay, so now he's been gone for a while. Yeah, so he's been gone for a while. So back in Egypt, after the passage of many years, now who knows how many years that was? It had to be quite some time for him to go back, and nobody knows who Moses is at that time. So if you're a king, or you're a Pharaoh's child, or you're a Pharaoh, and you leave for a year, maybe 2 years to go wherever, people are going to remember you. So he had to be gone for quite some time before he came back. And when he came back, nobody knew who he was. So he was just another peon. Moving right along. He just another peon that nobody knew about. But anyway, let me keep on reading. This chapter is almost over. Back in Egypt, after the passage of many years, a new Pharaoh had come to the throne, but the mysteries of the Israelites continued that God heard their cries for help. Oh, yeah, miseries. Sorry. One day after Moses was tending the flock of the father-in-law, whose name is given at this point in the narrative as Jethro, not Ruel, he found himself with the sheep of Mount Horeb, Mount Sinai, the mountain of God, where the Lord appeared to him in the bush and seemed to be burning, but not consumed by the flames. Attracted by this curious phenomenon, Moses approached, whereupon the Lord said to him, I am God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He then went on, I am sending you to the Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses expressed doubts about their ability to carry out the task and asked, if I go to the Israelites and say, the God of their fathers has sent me to them, and they ask me his name, how shall I answer them? The Lord replied, I am. That is who I am. Say that I am has sent you to them. You must tell the Israelites that it is Jehovah, the God of their fathers, the God of their forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, who has sent you to them. Moses protested that the Israelites would never believe the Lord had appeared to him. God asked, what have you in mind? God asked, what have you in mind? Moses answered, I'm sorry. God asked, what do you have in your hand? Moses answered, a staff. The Lord told him to throw it down on the ground, whereupon it turned into a snake. The Lord said, put on your hand and seize it by the tail. Moses did as he was told, and the snake has transformed again into a staff. The Lord then instructed him, put your hand inside the fold of your cloak. Moses again did as he was told, and then when he withdrew his hand, it was white with leprosy. Okay, so if he put his hand in his pocket and he pulled it out and it was white as leprosy, that means it wasn't white before he put his hand in his pocket, before he pulled his hand out. So, if you either black or you brown, so there's only two possibilities. So if your hand's in your pocket and you pull it out and it turns white, that means it wasn't white before he pulled his hand out of his pocket. But let me keep on going. The Lord told him to put his hand back inside of his cloak a second time, and then he withdrew it, and his hand was healthy again. Finally, the Lord said to him, if they are not convinced by these two signs, fetch some water from the Nile and pour it out on the ground, and the water will turn into blood. Praise the Lord. Moses continued to protest. Lord, I have never been eloquent. I am slow and hesitant of speech. That means he had what do you call it? He stuttered. So he wasn't able to complete a sentence without stuttering. So that's why he felt that he wasn't eloquent enough to be able to deliver God's word where people could understand him. So he had a slow tongue, or they call it speech impediment. So that's what he had. So he said, I'm slow and hesitant to speech. Oh Lord, please send someone else. As this was the first time that Moses was to address the Israelites, it would appear that he was not sure he would be able to make them understand him. And see, that's where the confusion comes in. That if well, first of all, he left. So when he left, he left as an Egyptian. He lived as an Egyptian since he was 3 months old. So now he's going to come back. He's going to come back and try to lead Israelites out of Egypt. And they're not even going to believe he's an Israelite because he lived as a Pharaoh's son or a king to the Pharaoh, with the Pharaoh for many years. So now Moses has hesitation. For one, he can't speak well, and two, he doesn't believe that the Israelites are going to believe God spoke to him in a burning bush, and that he's coming to rescue them. So they're not even going to believe it. So the Lord replies, makes it clear that in addition to the sisters were already, am I in the way to say this? Make them understand it. Moses continued to protest, Lord, I have never been eloquent. I am slow and hesitant to speak. And the Lord, please send someone else. As his first time that Moses was to address the Israelites, it would appear that he was not sure he would be able to make them understand them. The Lord reply makes it clear that in addition to the sister we already know of, Moses had a Levite brother. Now you see, if Moses was the firstborn, then he, this statement wouldn't be true. The sisters already know of you, so so he couldn't have been the firstborn because Miriam was older, and Miriam suggested anyway that his own mother would feed him until he's old enough to be weaned off. So the Lord replies, the Lord's reply makes it clear that in addition to the sister we already know of, Moses had a Levite brother who, in a subsequent passage, we were told was 3 years the elder. What about the brother, Aaron? He would do all the speaking. He is already on his way to meet you. He would speak to him and put words in his mouth, and he would be the mouthpiece. God also reassured Moses that his life would not be in any danger if he returned to Egypt, because all those who wished to kill him were already dead. Wow. Moses took his wife and his sons hitherto when we heard of only one. Let me see. Hitherto we had heard of only one son, Gershon, and set them upon an ass and returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand. In the course of the journey he met his brother Aaron. On arriving in Egypt, they appeared together before the assembly of the elders of Israel, where Aaron gave an account for everything the Lord had said to Moses. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh, where here again there was no indication that they had to travel any distance. Here again there was no indication that they had to travel any distance, and asked permission to undertake a 3-day trip in the wilderness to offer a sacrifice to the Lord. Pharaoh refused their request. Instead, he ordered the Israelites overseers not to provide them with any more straw or brick making. Any more straw for brick making. They were to gather their own, yet still produce the same number of bricks. They are a lazy people, said the king. That is why they are clamoring to go and offer a sacrifice to their God. Take no notice of a pack of lies. Wow. Take no notice of a pack of lies. The Israelites blamed Moses and Aaron for their flight. Moses and Aaron, for their part, renewed their pleas for the Israelites should be set free to worship their Lord, but Pharaoh remained obdurate. God there before kept his earlier promise that in their circumstances they would stretch out their hand and smite the Egyptians. He inflicted a series often plagues, blood, frogs, gnats, maggots, worms, and flies, pestilence, boils, hail, locusts, and darkness upon the country. As a final punishment, God assured Moses, "It is the Lord's Passover. On that night I will pass through the land of Egypt, and I will kill every firstborn of man and beast. Therefore that night, the 14th of the month of Abib, which is to be regarded as the first month of the Jewish year, was over. Pharaoh sent again for Moses and Aaron to, oh my goodness, I need to go to sleep, was before sent again for Moses and Aaron, and told them, be off, leave my people. You and your Israelites go and worship the Lord as you asked. The exodus began from Ramesses to Succoth the next day. In 600,000 men, wow, plus their dependents were said to have left the country that had been more than 430 years. Wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. The exodus began from Ramesses and Succoth the next day, the 15th. 600,000 men plus their dependents are said to have left the country that had been there for 430 years. From Succoth, the Israelites made their way to Etham, where they camped before setting off to the journey across the wilderness of the Sea of Reeds. Now that doesn't make sense to me. The next day, the 15th, 600,000 men plus their dependents are said to have left the country. I don't understand this. I think I might need to leave this here because they said 430 years. 430 years. It has been their home for 430 years. Let me finish this last, I don't know how many pages I'm getting sleepy. I think it's only 2 more pages. Okay, there's about 4 more pages, so I'm not gonna read them all tonight. My eyes are burning. But I'm gonna finish this last. I want to finish this last sentence here. Back in Egypt. Well, I'm gonna leave it here. The Sea of Reeds. I'm gonna leave it here. So what I concluded so far that I have reservations about that leaves things open to interpretation. One, why did they say Moses was the firstborn when he had a sister that was able to understand what needed to be done? Right? How old was Moses when he went back, when his mother sent him back to live with the Pharaoh's daughter? And then this man raised the question was, how can a single mother adopt a son and raise them as his own when you don't have a husband? That wasn't part of their culture. So, when someone's living a life of a lie, you get busted. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. And then now he's coming back again to do the same thing that was supposed to have been done to him. Let me go over this again. It's the Lord's Passover. On that night I shall pass through the land of Egypt and kill every firstborn of man and beast. Therefore that night, the 14th of the month of Abib, which is to be regarded as the first month of the Jewish year, was over. Pharaoh was over. Pharaoh sent again for Moses and Aaron and told them, be off, leave my people, and you and your Israelites go and worship the Lord. Let me see. And it was over. Pharaoh sent again for Moses and Aaron and told them, be off, leave my people, you and your Israelites go and worship the Lord as you asked. So Pharaoh decided to let them go. But he decided also to have another Passover and kill the firstborn and the beast again, the same way Moses wound up going back to Egypt. And then it says the Exodus began from Ramesses to Succoth the next day, the 15th. 600,000 men plus their dependents are said to have left the country that had been their home for 430 years. Now, see, this is why I don't understand it, because if if the Israelites came down from Canaan and it was only 79, there were no Israelites there before that. There was no Israelites there before that. They were Egyptians. The Israelites and the Hebrews came down from Canaan. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. And then now there's 600,000 of them, and they've been there for 430 years. I don't understand this. But I'm going to close it out because I don't understand why they came from Canaan in the first place. It's almost like they got two stories in one. They almost, to me, seem like they have the story of what happened with Joseph. I don't understand it. I don't understand. Anyway, I don't understand. So I'm gonna end this. I'm gonna go ahead and end this live, and I might continue this tomorrow. Because now I'm gonna be thinking about this all night. This is what I'm thinking about. Why did the Israelites, why did the Hebrews come to Egypt from Canaan in the first place? It almost seems like what happened with Joseph. But Moses shouldn't have been around when Joseph was. You see what I'm saying? When Joseph was the king, was under the Pharaoh, Moses wasn't around. Anyway, I don't understand. Maybe I need to reread this tomorrow and find out why they came down from Canaan in the first place. It seems like there's two stories in one going on. Maybe I'm too sleepy to get it. And when they came down, there was only 79 of them. And now there's 600,000. So they mean there were the 79, they multiplied. I don't get it. Let me go back up here. Oh my goodness. Let me see. There was only 69 when they came down here. I don't know. I'm tired, so maybe. Okay, here it is. Totals. Okay, let me read this sentence real quick. Joseph was able to obtain permission for the father, Jacob, Israelite, and the tribe of Israel to come down from Canaan to live in Egypt. In all, we were told that the number of Israelites, including Joseph and his family, who settled in Egypt, is as a result of this arrangement totals 79 of 70, 69 of whom are named. The Israelites who were shepherds were not allowed to settle in Egypt proper, however, because shepherds had been looked upon as abomination to the Egyptians since the century-long occupation of the rule of the Eastern Delta by the pastoralists and Sycos, who preceded the foundation of the 18th dynasty. Instead, they were given the land of Goshen in the same area where the Sea of the Nile Delta, which is biblically tradition, was remote from the seat of Pharaoh's power, which is biblically tradition, where was remote from the seat of Pharaoh's power. The rest of the opening chapter of the book of Exodus was taken up with a rather modern summary of the story that is to follow. Almost at the very beginning of this tale, Israel is set in Eastern Delta. We are told that the Israelites were waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. As a tribe, as the tribe of Israel consisted of nearly 70 men, women, and children at the time of their arrival to Egypt. This vast increase in number suggested that some years have elapsed in the interval of view which appears to be confirmed in the next verse, which is the reference to the king, which is not Joseph. To the king which knew not Joseph until the time Aram had who finally ended the Amorana era. There was no king of whom it is strictly to be said that he did not know Joseph, whom have I identified as Judah, vizier of Thutmose IV, and his successor, Amenhotep III, which all the Amorite kings were descendants from Joseph. Next comes the account of the oppression, whose motive is to say that when they fall out any war, they join also into our enemies and fight against us. The Egyptians set the Israelites to the task of building the treasures cities of Pithom and Ramses, and they made lives better and harder, bondage, mortar and brick, and in the manner of service in the field. Then he encountered a contradiction. When the Israelites continued to multiply, the ruling Pharaoh ordered them that all male children be born to be killed. Yet we learned that at that time, just when Moses is about to make an appearance in the story, the Israelites only had 2 midwives, and the other name of them was Sephora, and the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other was Puah. He argues that the incident must have been taking place early in the sojourn, where 2 midwives was sufficient for the needs of Israelite women, and that as Pharaoh was able to speak to the midwives in person, he must have been a resident at the time in the vicinity of Goshen where the Israelites had settled. The midwives failed to carry out the Pharaoh's orders, and whereupon he issued a further order that all male children born in Israelites in Egypt were to be cast into the river. Oh boy. I don't know. I don't understand it. Anyway, I'm getting super sleepy. I'm going to continue this tomorrow. I'm going to do a part 2 because I'm not even finished. But this is, I don't know. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody stopping by. I don't know if you got anything out of it because I'm just thinking about everything that's going on, and I have some questions and some reservations about some of the things that I was reading, because but Moses came before. Oh no. Moses came before Joseph. I don't know. Anyway, all praises to the Most High God. I really appreciate it. Everyone stopping by, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. The whole purpose of this live is to determine, and it's not over it. So I just started reading this book. So is Akhenaten and Moses the same person? I believe he is, but we got to continue reading to see where the correlation comes in and the differences of the 2 individuals, and or if there are any differences at all. So today I'm just reading about the Israelites, Israel, the Hebrews, and how they came to Canaan, why they were there, and how they multiplied. And to me, if you come from Canaan to Egypt, come down. They came from the north side down to Egypt. So if they came from the north down to Egypt, why did they come there? And they multiplied so vastly, so they had to have mixed in with the Egyptians. So who's who? And then they were supposed to kill all the firstborn, but what about the daughters? So that means their bloodline has been tainted and mixed in with the Egyptians. So you can't tell who's who. Because if they started with 69 people and went in there with 600,000, there had to be Egyptians. They had to be mixed. So anyway, I'm going to do a part 2 of this tomorrow. All praises to the Most High. I appreciate everybody stopping by. I hope you get something out of this. This is my first line, so be easy on me. I'll get better. But if you like research, like learning about, the Bible, I'm not here to teach the Bible. I'm not equipped to do that. I'm not here to teach it. But you do raise questions, and then in the beginning it was Moses and the Israelites. See, my whole goal is to determine if the Hebrews are real, and where did they come from? Why were they always slaves from the beginning of the time? Why? And that's what I'm here to try to figure out. I really, really, really want to know that. I want to know, what were they good for besides being slaves? Unfortunately, I really would like to know that, because they had been introduced into society as slaves. Yesterday, today, it seemed like forevermore. But we're going to figure that out, and I'm going to come back with a part 2 of this and see if I can draw some comparisons and answer some questions. Like, comment, and subscribe. If you got anything out of this, please like the video. If you didn't get anything out of it, just go ahead and make a comment, and I'll do better next time, and we can pretty much learn together and improve my lives eventually as time goes on. So thank you. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy your morning. It's 11 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude. I appreciate you stopping by. All praises to the Most High.